Any comment from anybody on that? All right. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Thanks, Liz. Second?
I'll second, Bjorn.
Thank you, BJ. Does anybody have any changes or adjustments to the agenda items?
I actually have a question, Adrian.
Sure.
Was the intention for the Finance Committee to make a recommendation to the full board tonight? And if so, at what point would that be done?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I thought you were just going to give an update. I'm not sure.
Okay, so we'll table that for, we can resume that Monday.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. Anne, I'm assuming that you'll tell me if anybody in the non-virtual world is not being heard from. I hope.
Hi there. Yes, there's 2 speakers from that are here on site. I missed the beginning. I'm working with Len and Doug.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll call the approval of agenda vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Any nays? Abstentions?
We might want to include Len and Doug as abstentions, unless
Oh,
we
this
can't
is
see them
true.
yet.
And do you have their this is a learning experience. Thank you, BJ. And did you have their votes on the approval of agenda?
One moment, please.
I hope they're going to join us. This is not going to be easy otherwise.
Yes, please, approval from both.
Okay. Are they both planning on joining the virtual meeting on site?
Yes, we're working.
Oh, okay. Okay. Would they like us to take a couple minutes for them to get settled? I didn't realize it was so fluxy.
Yes, please.
Okay. We'll be back in 5 minutes, everybody. Or, I mean, I'll stay here too, but if anyone wants to walk away for a minute. Oh, Maria, do you want to try and go back out and back again? Could you hear me? Guess not.
I can message her over here.
Okay, yeah, because I was just going to try and I just hadn't chat yet.
Yeah. No, maybe not. BJ, will you do it?
Well,
I don't
yeah, I'm
know how to use
trying.
Google Meet. Oh wait, no, I got it.
Well, I just sent her a phone message.
Okay.
Let's see what happens here.
So I think I'm okay.
You are indeed, Len.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi, Len. You are labeled Diane Ingalls again. But,
We're just having a great old time here at Mill River.
okay.
Was that helpful, Maria? Making some noise just so
Thankfully,
you can be tested.
Anne's here to
Still no Maria?
Oh, shoot.
help us.
Can you use headphones do your headphones work? In case there's something odd with your computer.
That thing got screwed right into the meeting.
Huh. So you're good now?
Woo!
Okay. Good then.
See, this is what I have. Get up and
Oh, you did?
No, so I used to get.
Oh, not tonight.
This has been.
Doug and Ann are still working.
I can tell.
This is the camera started.
Oh dear.
Not that I'm any computer-wise smarter, but wait,
Here's Doug. No picture yet, but no, he left again. Ah, well.
He was there, now he's gone.
Rejoin.
Hit the wrong button. I like computers with
You
two
talk
buttons.
about the blind leading the blind here.
Don't touch it. Come on. There we go. Join now. See, I touched this one thinking it was the phone. The phone is over here.
This is the.
Somewhere.
Let's see
That's in your meter.
if your camera will start.
there's terrible feedback, guys.
Yeah, that's due to both their mics and speakers being open. So if one person mutes their computer,
Oh, because they're all.
Yeah, I can.
yep, and you both just listen to one audio feed.
This is a great learning experience. I mean, we had to do it at some point. So.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if the people who are in person almost need to wear headsets, but that doesn't work for the community. So
They'd have to leave their mics off. Though.
Okay, well, I didn't bring mine with me.
No, but just leave your mics off when you're not actually speaking, and then that'll probably cut most of it.
For the people who are in person,
We'll
you can
have
actually
all of-
leave if one
in a
person
pile.
has their audio on and everyone else mutes themselves,
Mhm.
the one computer should be able to pick everyone's audio up.
Oh, that would be great if they're sitting close enough to each other.
Yeah, so I mean, if everyone mutes themselves except for one computer, that one computer should be able to pick everyone's audio up, even though the person is speaking to a computer with their audio is not on.
You guys get that?
So you want me to shut mine down?
So one person in
Not
that
the
room
meeting.
should have their audio on. Everyone else should be muted, and always leave that audio on so that when people talk, it'll be picked up.
I have bad ears, so I can't hear.
You should definitely have headphones.
So he's saying just leave your mic.
Ow.
And can you turn Doug's microphone off? Because he'll be able to speak and Len's or yours will pick it up.
Yes, Doug is currently muted, as is Len.
Okay, cool. I can now. Doug's is right in the light fixture and I couldn't see the.
Just anticipating a problem. We also want whoever's going to have the live computer, the other person, please turn your volume all the way down as well, because when the double audio tries to kick in, it'll go haywire.
I'm trying to get Doug's audio off. 1 second.
You have a lovely echo.
So should
someone-
we invest
Yeah,
in like a conference room speaker
Mm-hmm.
that has both mic and audio to connect to one of the feeds?
That would be a great idea.
And I'm all a proponent for more of a permanent computer in there that's supposed to be the connection computer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Doug and Len, would you sort of raise your hands if you're ready to start? Doug, you ready? You can hear us? Okay. All right. We're going to restart. We voted on approving the agenda and we are ready for public input. And I'm sorry, I know I have a list.
I've got it for you, Adrienne. We have 3 folks signed up, Crystal Usher, followed by Bex Aiken, and then Madison Aiken.
Okay.
And I believe all 3 individuals are with us.
Yes. I'm just opening it up. Crystal, you were first on the list. If you are, can activate your mic, that would be great.
Hi.
Thank
I guess I'll start with, I guess I'm a little confused with the hybrid model. Meetings I've been in that are hybrid are one computer and whoever's in person sits together, and that's an in-person environment. Whoever's remote connects remotely. So I guess I'm a little confused why there's a group of people all with their own computers in person. I don't think that's going to do anything to engage the community, but that's not what I was speaking about. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay.
Tonight, I will express my concerns related to the bylaws of the chairperson in relation, to board committees. My understanding is the law is written to state the chairperson of the board can only sit on committees in an unofficial manner, the same as would any member of the public. While attending the first ad hoc committee meeting regarding school retention, I was surprised to see Adrienne take charge of the meeting by nominating Len as chairperson. As the meeting was closing, it was scheduled around Adrienne's availability. However, for reasons unknown to me, she was not at that next meeting. A recent Front Porch Forum posted by our chairperson regarding community conversation, Adrienne wrote she is serving on the Finance, Personnel, Policy, Negotiations, and Community Engagement Committee. I'm a little confused as to how this can be if she is your elected chairperson. I can think of a number of occasions when Adrian has asked and encouraged the public to submit our comments via email after public speaking or in addition to. However, once that email is received by the board, I understand board members are instructed not to reply all, as this would then require the need to adhere to public meeting laws, which is understandable. However, I suspect Adrian then gathers individual email responses to provide the sender with a formal response, avoiding proper board discussion. While I realize this is probably a time-saving technique, I think our community will agree this method does not provide room for any real board discussion or public transparency. Art Peterson, for example, made public comment at the last meeting in regards to professional development, training, and material, backing up and even providing a possible remedy to a prior concern raised by Christine Billings. I don't think anyone would dispute CRT is a controversial topic and warrants discussion. A concern now dismissed by our entire school board in an email written by Adrian to Art. Christine has provided concerning slides with specific examples that were captured at a recent professional development meeting. Her public concern was added to a future agenda in which was later tabled by Adrian, noting it was too late in the evening for a productive dialogue and has yet to be added to a future agenda to date, unless it was added before I joined this evening. Our board is lacking fluency. We are desperately in need of a chairperson who will take lead, follow public meeting laws and bylaws while supporting other board members in this area. A chairperson should conduct a professional, fluent, and productive meeting. We are not seeing this. I hope each of you can begin working together to create a more productive and transparent board. Please consider speaking up, engage in difficult conversations, and challenge your fellow board members, and gain trust and respect by those who elected you. After public meeting and the open discussion that's been recently added, there's really been no feedback. So Adrian will open it up to the group of board members, and maybe one, if we're lucky, two of you will speak up. So I really encourage you to take advantage of that time to show the board, to show the community that you're hearing our concerns. So thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Bex Aiken.
We live in the unceded stolen land of the West Abenaki. It is Indigenous Peoples Month, and I am grateful that the Mill River Union School District recycles compost to support a healthy earth.
Does it?
Madison, are you up?
I'm ready, yes.
Okay.
My name's Madison and my pronouns are she, her. I want to thank the superintendent for making all of the hard decisions regarding safety and COVID action. Specifically, I want to acknowledge it is clear that all of the decisions to stay closed, remain open, masked, and set protocols are based on staff and student safety. I've seen breakthrough cases and it's heartbreaking. Thank you for organizing vaccinations during school hours. This supported equity on so many levels. Thank you for the elementary skiing and snowboarding programs. I know this is not a new program, but it's one that has grown and improved over the years because district leaders know the value of allowing all students access to this particular recreational activity. Introduction to these winter sports would not have happened for so many students if not for the leadership and careful considerations of staff, parents, and administration. Again, this is the equity in action that the district leadership and staff have implemented for years. Next, there's so much to celebrate and appreciate in our community. The school is the backbone of our town because we aren't fortunate enough to have a town center and all the benefits that would come from that. I remain concerned about the attempts of our local representatives and members of the Town Planning Commission to dismantle the cultural and economic stability of Clarendon with an attempt to undermine Clarendon Elementary School. Many community members work at Clarendon Elementary School and have ties to that school and support its success in many ways and have for generations. I'm frustrated to know that there's a small group of men leading an attempt to economically and culturally dismantle our community. I'm hopeful others will attend meetings, inform and organize the CES staff and community, and continue to work to improve our local elementary school, not dismantle it. I enjoy being part of every aspect of my child's education and except attending these board meetings. This is the only place where I find representation and inclusion feels a little bit dangerous, aggressive, and unsupported at times. Granted, I haven't been to any meetings since the Black Lives Matter flag flew and the sky did not fall. So thank you to everyone in this room thank you to everyone in this room who's accepting of and working on behalf of every student each day. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. Okay. I'm not really sure where the public comment or the board comment on the public's comment went. I didn't catch the fact that it was missing, and I'm not sure if we voted to end it at any past meeting. Does anybody have any? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that so I'm going to put in 5 minutes if that's okay with everybody. If anyone has any comments on things that have been brought up, or just to say that you'd like to see it on another agenda is fine.
Art Peterson asked me to read this, so I'll read this for Art. I question whether the process to answer my proposal and administration correspondence to staff regard proper. Instead of discussing with the board at an open meeting, the chair used email with board members' tone of the I'm only getting part of the thing with a condescending tone of the response. I'm concerned that the proper procedure was not followed. I asked the board chair to review how answers to questions or proposals by the public are handled.
Bruce, are you done?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear the finish to that. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? I will. Oh, go ahead, Bjorn.
I was going to say, I've heard CRT come up quite a bit. We've had our curriculum director say it's not going to be presented. We hired someone based on credentials. There's been a lot of talk about how we are not actually teaching it and we're actually focusing on equity. And I feel like I keep getting attacked by the community saying that we're not addressing these things, which we have already stated that we have not addressed. So I don't know how to bring it up anymore. Sorry if I'm getting a little bit upset about this one, but we have other stuff that we need to work on. We have a direction. We've stated that direction. I may not be happy, may not be what everybody wants, but we need to at least see it through. So community, please let us do our job. Let us get through what we've done. We've already stated that we are not doing this. We're not going teaching CRT. I don't know where CRT came from. It wasn't in any of our documentation. We're teaching equity, which means representation. And thank you, Bex, for representing that it's an Indigenous People Week. That's exactly the type of thing that we're trying to bring. And just, yeah, okay, sorry. I'm just tired of hearing it because we're not teaching it and keep telling us not to teach it. We're not teaching it.
Okay. Thanks, PJ. In terms of the board responses, I'm following how we've done board responses for a very long time. The chair or whoever has volunteered to help the chair answers a response, and then the response is sent around to see if people are okay with it, or if they'd like something changed, or if they don't want it sent at all because they'd rather talk about it at a board meeting. Now, people had that email in their hot little inboxes for days. I'm sorry people didn't pick them up. I'm sorry they didn't make comment. It is not an illegal way to do a board communication. If we'd like to have further conversation on this topic, any board member can ask to have it put on the agenda. I have added board communication to the board retreat for Saturday so that we can have further conversation after people think about how they would like this to be handled. Because I'm doing what board chairs have been doing for quite a while on this board. And I understand that now it is not satisfactory, and you all can choose how you'd like it to be handled. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Is there any other board member that needs to make a statement? Or
Yes, I
Go
have to agree with Art. I think we could find a better way to handle this, especially with the community as it is now. We need to bring the community together. We need to show that we're going to discuss these things. I don't feel that the board chair sending out a letter that she wrote and asking the board members to comment and make suggestions. I like to discuss things. If I hear something that BJ says or Lynn says or Asha says, it could sway me one way or the other. Why did you say that? I don't see what anybody said to you. I don't know if one person commented to you, 4 people commented to you, or everybody but me commented to you. And that's not a discussion. So when a community member asks for something to be discussed, it's not via email. That's just how I feel. I think it's avoiding discussion.
Bruce, I said we were going to have this conversation at board retreat.
Right. You told me how you felt. Now I'm telling you how I feel.
But
now,
fine.
Let me finish, please.
I am. I said fine.
I brought up a committee looking at why people are leaving or pulling their student ad hoc committee. And I brought that up back in August, September. We just now getting to it. We've had 2 meetings. It was on the agenda several times to come up during a meeting, and it got delayed. So when you say it's going to come up, I just want to make sure it comes up. That's all I'm asking.
Yes, Asha?
Thank you, Adrienne. I'd like to thank Madison for her comments, specifically in regard to the ski program. I had the fortune of working as a volunteer for that program a couple of years ago, and very much enjoyed doing so. And I'm so glad to hear that parents are seeing and families are seeing the benefit of that program. I'm glad it's something we can offer.
Thanks, Asha. I agree. My boys loved it too. Yes, Lynn?
Just a comment, and I was going to bring it up later under, and maybe I should, under transact other legal business. We had, at one time, we had an executive council whose job it was to discuss information that didn't necessarily need to come before the full board. And so when we're talking about these kinds of issues, my first impression is that it would be a good spot for the executive council. And I don't want to go into a whole lot of rigmarole at this point, but I think it's something that needs to be put on the agenda for our board meeting to say, okay, is the executive council dead? Are we not using it anymore? Because it did exist at one point, and I thought at one point it worked okay. So I again, I'm not going to beat this horse to death, but I think it's something we need to talk about moving forward.
Okay, Len, just to clarify, we did readopt the idea of an executive council, but it was a representative from each of the sending towns to be available to the superintendent if he needed quick advice.
Correct. And I agree with that. But what I'm saying is when we're looking at, and Adrienne, I'm not trying to put you in the spot.
No, I'm just clarifying what it was.
I understand that.
Okay.
But my point is, do we need to have another venue? Because, and your letter was fine that you sent out, but if I disagree with the letter, I'm not going to nitpick it. I disagree with it or not, whatever the case may be. My point is, do we need to have another level where we can talk about things? And I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you do, Adrian. I really do. But do we as a board need to have another level somewhere that we can say, okay, let's talk about this before it gets sent out? That's all I'm saying.
No, I totally agree, Len. This is, I mean, just to be clear, this was supposed to be quick public comment and it has digressed a little bit. I put the idea of board communication on the goal, I mean, on the retreat for Saturday. So come with your ideas and we can hash it out then. This
Thank
is
you.
probably not a great time to do it.
I agree. And thank
Okay,
you.
so we're gonna move on unless somebody else has another comment since we've already gone off the rails anyway. Nope, okay. We have approval of minutes from 11:3. Do I have a motion to, thank you, Liz, to approve those? Is anybody gonna second that, please? Oh, thank you, Maria. Oh, sorry, Asha. Are there any comments or corrections or additions? Okay, if that's not true, I'll call the question then. If you approve of the minutes as submitted for 11/3/2021, please raise your hand. Okay, I think I see everybody. I mean, I don't see Andrea, so we should put Andrea in, I guess, as abstaining because I haven't seen her votes.
I vote yes.
Oh,
Sorry.
thanks. Thanks,
I'm on
Andrea.
a different computer and the video camera and
No, that's fine. Yeah, pipe up when we take a vote because then I'll hear you. That's fine. Okay, those passed. Was there any nays, abstentions? No? Okay. We have a report on the student board representative status. And I think Tyler is.
Yep, I am here. So it was my goal tonight to bring you one, possibly two candidates that were going to serve on the board as a student rep. However, due to a couple different reasons with school, unfortunately, that I'm not able to do that at this time. I do want to give the board an update. We have 4 candidates that have expressed interest. One sophomore, 2 juniors, and a senior. And it's my goal to either Friday of this week or Monday or Tuesday of next week to put together a panel of a few teachers and a few students to then interview those candidates and ask some questions as to what their motives are and what they would like to bring to the board as a student, and then make a decision there as to 1 or possibly 2 of those students to sit on the board. So that's where we are right now. I apologize. It was my goal to have someone for this meeting, but just some circumstances prevented that. So our meeting in hopefully for December 1st, the board meeting in December, we'll have 1, if not 2 students ready to go for the board.
That'd be great. Thanks. Maria had her hand up.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. Tyler, I was just wondering, is there a board member involved in that process just to like answer questions of the students as they come?
We could if you wanted to. When I originally discussed this with Dave and Adrian a little while ago, we talked about an all student committee to pick the students. I wanted to throw a couple teachers in there or staff just to have a mix, but yeah, we definitely could do that. I will, if that's what the board would like, I would be happy to entertain that.
I mean, not for I think the choosing process, but I think, in any good interview, the interviewee has questions and we might be able to answer them.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Len, you had a comment? Raise your hand.
Yeah, just I would encourage us to involve as many students as we can.
Sure.
We don't need to have just one person. And I think building up, Tyler, you had mentioned sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that we build that foundation so that moving forward, those kids feel a part. Sure. And So as a sophomore, why not be a part of this whole thing? As a junior, why not?
Sure.
As a senior, why not? I mean, seniors go, but sophomores and juniors can then move up. And that's, I've always felt very strongly that that's important.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Len, I'd like to see a rotation, where they're on for a year or two, as the senior moves out, we bring another underclassman in, and then they're on for a period of time.
I'm good with that. I just think we need to keep that in mind.
Sure.
And as we look on.
Yep.
Okay. I guess I'm not sure how we left it, Tyler, or would people like to reach out to Tyler if they think they are available to help with his interviewing or?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, Adrian, is once I get the panel together, because I'm having a little hard time. I've got the teachers all lined up, but the kids having a little difficulty. But once I have that panel lined up in the day and time, I'll put an email out to the board, and whoever can make that meeting will be great.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Is that okay with everybody? Sort of. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to add, it would be nice if part of the process is that each one gets to attend a meeting, either 2 at a time or something like that, before they get chosen, so they know what it's like to be on a meeting.
That's very fair. I mean, if you want, we could always schedule. I could have the 4 candidates come to the December 1st meeting, even though we've already had the panel, and then they might actually, they might take themselves out of that process or what have you, would be even more interested, and then we could have a final say for the second meeting in December.
I think that's a good idea.
That'd be great. Heck, if
lots of
us had our way, we probably wouldn't be doing this. But anyways.
It's just another byproduct of the pandemic that this is so difficult.
It is, and again, as we've discussed in the past, students have a lot going on, and we're trying to look for that consistency. So, but from the 4 candidates we have, I've received quite a bit of interest. So I think we have 4 very viable candidates.
That's great. That's really good. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
We have federal funding presentation from the administration. So I'm going to turn that over to Dave. What?
Yeah, actually, so Brian, Jody, and Coral are taking the lead on that presentation. I appreciate them sharing with us tonight. They got some good stuff for you.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're doing well this evening. Thank you for making some time for us to share this with you. I know this might not be the most thrilling information to share, but I do want to give a little context before we dive into the nuts and bolts here. The leadership team met today, and we had a pretty long conversation around what do we see in our schools, how are things going, what are we proud of, what needs looking at so that we can find some areas of growth, what can we be doing better at. And the great thing about that conversation is those are the types of things that we always have as we start looking at these federal grants. So the why that happens before we dive into these grants, I think, is really important, even though we're not going to talk quite as much about that tonight. But that why is definitely there, thinking about how we want to spend these funds to address needs that we are seeing. And some of those needs are a little different due to the pandemic, but some of those needs are similar, just a little more acute at this point. So we do have some grants that I will call the usual grants. These are things that you've heard us speak about or you've read about them in some of our board reports in the past. A big one is the Consolidated Federal Program Grant. So if you hear people talk about Title I, Title II, Title IV, which have been around for quite a bit of time, that's what our Consolidated Federal Program Grant consists of. So to give you an idea of where that comes from, about how much we have and how we use that, that is largely based on our free and reduced lunch numbers, actually. So when we think about some of our students that might have some of the highest needs, knowing that we have those students, knowing where those students are, and having an accurate count of those really does matter, because funding does follow those students and has for a long time. If you read up on Title I, a big reason behind the creation of Title I is to close achievement gaps, to look at which students are underperforming, underserved, and to bring resources there. though we do use these funds to really support all our students, actually. When you combine all those title funds into the CFP, we get about $300,000. That tends to be what that looks like for our district. Title I, in really broad strokes, is going to be student support. So that would be our intervention program. That would be not necessarily curriculum materials, but maybe supplemental materials. So we wouldn't be buying a math curriculum, but we might be buying some resources to use above and beyond our math curriculum. So intervention materials, things like that. Title II is going to be educator support. So professional development, instructional coaches, leadership pieces, mentoring pieces, those will come out of Title II. Title IV, I'll, in broad strokes, call that curriculum support. There are a couple of other things we can do with Title IV. We have a tiny sliver of it that the state and the federal government dictate what percentage we can use for technology. Some of that small technology sliver is professional development for technology. Some of it's actual materials. To put that in context, if we have maybe about 300,000 that we can use for Title IV, we might get to use $1,200 of it to buy some technology, actual devices or things like that. So the large chunk of that is really going to be curriculum support, which a lot of times is going to be professional development. It's very heavily geared towards STEM programming. So PD for science, technology, engineering, math programs. We also have a big area there that falls under safe and healthy schools. So bullying, hazing, harassment prevention programs, things like that. Some of our equity work, those professional development pieces, when you've heard folks say that that's been grant funded, Title IV would be the place where that fits under safe and healthy schools. So that CFP one it's interesting and fun to try and figure out what you can use each one for and how many dollars you have and how to sustain a program out of that fund that really does support students. It's interesting work for sure. Next on the list is E-rate. That's one you've heard me talk about a lot. That is based on free reduced lunch numbers again, which is interesting. And they keep shifting the funding model every 4 or 5 years or so. And they'll give us about a 5-year pot of money based on student numbers. And we fall into a category where we get 70% reimbursement. So our internet subscription for the district, the dollars that we send to VTEL to sustain our internet, 70% of that cost is actually federally funded. And that's huge. We just are in the midst of going through a wireless upgrade in the district. And that's 70% reimbursed federally. So we might spend about $50,000 a year, and that slowly works away at that 5-year pot of money. And we tend to use a pretty sizable chunk of it. We try not to leave too much behind. So that's a good, important one that we can use. Can't buy computers with it, but you can buy a lot of other interesting things. So part of that work is knowing the grant, knowing the timelines, trying to get everything lined up and getting approval, revising, coming back, and really working to get things that are going to be supportive for our students and staff. The MAC grant, Medicaid Administrative Claiming Reimbursement Grant, is a really tiny one. That's one that we get about $12,000 or so a year. And we've funded different small projects with that. We've done some summer programming. We've done some like 6th grade to 7th grade transition camps. We've had a tooth tutor in the past. Currently, we are funding a student assistance program part-time position to help at the high school. Those tend to focus on health outcomes. So you heard me say tooth tutor, so things like that. Adrian, question? Nope. Okay.
Sorry, just moving my lamp.
No worries, no worries. Last one, all of the wonderful things you hear about Carrie Becker sharing through the after school program and her wonderful summer program. That's 21st Century Grant, and that is federal funding again. That grant is actually up this year. And we've been lucky that we've accessed it, I believe, more years than is typical. Carrie can tell you far more about that. But we actually have a wonderful opportunity where we thought the grant was going to be gone, but we're actually in the midst of trying to reapply for, I think, another 5 years. Don't quote me on that. You'll have to ask Carrie. But that's something that we were trying to figure out how we were going to sustain. But that grant looks like it's still going to be there. So that's great. And I'm going to pass it over to Coral so she can share with you the IDEA grants.
Thank you, Brian. So IDEA B, or IDEA-B, stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and the B stands for Part B. And what that means basically is that Part B funds are used to serve children with disabilities who are aged 3 up to 21. Part C is a different part, and that's what applies to children who are birth to age 3. But obviously, as a school district, we focus our attention on the Part B of the IDEA statute. This is a grant that I have to apply for annually. Generally speaking, our allocation runs around $290,000-ish coming out of the IDEA B funding, and this funding is must be specifically applied to serving students with disabilities. It cannot generally be applied elsewhere. There's sometimes some fine print, but in general, this money must be used exclusively to serve children with disabilities on an IEP. What happens with this is our funding allocation. So, how do we know how much money we're getting? What happens is the state bases our allocation off the prior 3 years worth of expenses. There's something called a maintenance of effort, or MOE. And basically that is a formulary, a complicated one, but it's a formulary that looks at how much funding do we need to continue to operate at a level playing field. So that's, Adrienne, I'll stop and let you ask. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just curious if you could address how this is going to interact with Act 173.
Sure, I can definitely do that.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure thing. So that's just a little bit about how the IDEA B grant kind of, what it funds and what it looks like. I'll give an example of some things that are generally in the IDEA B grant. It's a lot of staffing, actually. Our assistant director of student services, we have salary and benefits in there for different people. We have expenses in there to cover travel and mileage costs for the staff that we have that have to drive around to different schools. This grant covers the cost of contracted services that are provided to kids. Sometimes it covers the purchase of new devices. So it kind of runs an expansive array of things that it has covered or can cover. But generally, we fill this grant up with funding the cost of staffing. The ARP, IDEA B, these acronyms, these letters are crazy to me. ARP is the American Rescue Plan. So in other words, as a result of COVID and as a result of funding that was made available to schools sort of on an emergency basis, special education was also afforded basically emergency funding through the American Rescue Plan. And so what happened this year is we were allotted an additional pot of funding that was around like $58,000 or something like ish. And that funding is, again, must be used to support students with disabilities, but it also is, it is supposed to be short-term funding. It's supposed to be funding that can be applied fairly immediately to fairly simple expenses that we don't expect to have recur, next year or further down the line. So that money, as we're told right now, is basically one-time funding. Unless something changes, which it could, we won't have an ARP IDB grant, next year, as I understand it, but one never knows. But we did have that additional sort of surplus of funding this year. The other thing I'll say before I answer Adrian's question is that the IDB grant has a section that funds early intervening services. So that funding has to be applied specifically to children that are ages 3, 4, or 5. And it allows us to provide special services and supports to meet the needs of a younger population. So the grant does require that we spend a certain amount of funding on pre-K, and that pre-K age children, and that's usually around $11,000 or $12,000. It's a percentage of the total grant. Last part of the grant requires that we allocate funding to serve children with disabilities who might be attending a private school or an independent school, or who might be engaging in home study. And so what that requires is that we have to track who our students are that are enrolled in private facilities outside the district, and those that are engaging in home study. And if there is a child that happens to have a disability, we will commit certain funding to serve those children as well. And so the grant requires us to allocate about $6,000 for the provision of services to that particular group of students. So Adrian asked a question about, how does Act 173, alter this or change this? Well, one thing is Act 173 will reduce the amount of our federal grant funding. The amount of IDB funds that we receive is based on our census. Our census is based on our total enrollment. Our total enrollment is down. However, what I will say is that the way that our funding is calculated, it is based on an average over a couple years' time. So they will take into account our census for this school year and the last 2. But again, we know that there are factors that have really impacted our enrollment. And so again, that funding is going to go down. You won't hear me say again that we're getting $290,000 from the federal government. I won't be back saying that. So that forces us to have to sort of reconsider how we allocate funds, on what, how it flows through. There's a lot of considerations with that. But we do know that our funding will be drastically reduced compared to where we're at now. So, Maria.
Thanks, Coral. I just want to make sure I understand what's going on. So the funding is related to our total population, or is related to our population who has documented disabilities?
The funding amount that we will receive next year is going to be based on our census or our head count total. The funding that we receive currently is based on what's called maintenance of effort, how much we typically spend over the last 3 years serving kids with disabilities. But the money, no matter what, still has to go to kids with disabilities, no matter what. They're just using our census to figure out how much we get.
That sounds problematic. So that's just, so they use the census and then they assume a percentage of that population will need services, and they calculate from there.
Mm-hmm. They look at our child count numbers. Yep. So they'll look at a rolling total of how many kids we're serving with disabilities. Yep.
Does it depend on where you live or anything, or is it just purely? No?
Just your sense. It's just our total enrollment is how they're going to base that figure starting next year.
Like I said, it sounds problematic.
Yeah, it's complicated, I will say, and it's taken a long time to learn for sure. Adrian.
So when you say our census, is that a weighted census or an actual?
That's just our ADM. It's just our total enrollment. just the number of students we have enrolled as of today.
So, not to belabor the point, but I mean, it's not an unusual thing to have schools that have high poverty rates, high rural rate, that are in rural areas, to have higher identified SPED students.
Yep. So
there's no correlation. I mean, there's no adjustment for that.
Not yet, but that's what the pupil weighting study is looking at. That's what the legislature is trying to hash out. But right now they're talking about identified students with disabilities. So what they're going to look at is what is Mill River's total number of kids currently on an IEP, but there's not going to be a factor for how those needs differ, except that if there is a child who is considered to have what we call extraordinary costs, there will be some weighting in that formula that might allow us to receive extra funding to serve that student. And that threshold is $60,000. So in other words, if a student's services cost $60,000 or more, they will be considered a student with an extraordinary cost, and some of that money will come back to us so that we can apply it. But yeah, that's the difficulty of 173. Regardless of the intensity of the need, the money is all applied the same. It's not going to be based on your disability or how serious it is. The amount of funding applied to each student is the same. So it's a very big change.
Is that going to change? Are state place students going to be counted differently or no?
State place students will still be considered state place students as they always have been, and that will also be considered an other source of revenue for the district that doesn't really have anything to do with like your grant amount or anything. Those students will still result in some revenue, to the district through other avenues.
I mean, it would be terrible to punish districts for having, an inclusive sort of reputation.
Yep. Dave.
Well, can I just interject really quickly, Adrian, to one of your questions? It's important that we designate that Act 173 and the outcomes of the weighting study and what the legislature does with that are two separate things, although they will interplay in ways that every district feels. For the sake of the board's awareness, the original UVM study, the original models on adjusting pupil weights based on that study showed that the impact for us would be relatively neutral. That doesn't mean like zero impact, but it means there are districts that would stand to benefit mightily from the adjusted weights, districts that would suffer mightily from the adjusted weights, and we would be roughly middle of the road. So just want to kind of have that out there and understood.
Thank you.
Other questions, or is there anything else you'd like me to talk about that I didn't? I'm happy to expand if you'd like me to.
I don't know, Coral, can you see everybody? Because I can't tell if anybody else has a question. If you have a question for Coral, just speak up because we can't see everybody.
Hit the raise hand button either.
Well, I just don't even see the buttons.
I don't. Oh, I just don't see all the people.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Coral.
All right, and now I'm going to talk a little bit more about other pandemic-related grants. And I know being a school administrator has never looked so glamorous as when we really start to dive down into these federal grants, right? So the first grant that we got as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic was the CRF, the Coronavirus Relief Fund. That was way back in spring of 2019 when schools were shut. And that was a reimbursement grant. So we had to pay for some immediate need things and then got reimbursed from the federal government after that. Those included things like HVAC upgrades. We had to create an isolation room in every school for when a kid did have symptoms and they needed a safe place to stay until they could get picked up. Sanitation needs. We had a lot of masks to buy, barriers when we needed social distancing, plexiglass for our school admin assistants. Those sorts of things were what we did with that first grant. Then we started working with the ESSER grants. So the ESSER grants are formula-based grants based on free and reduced lunch again. So again, that is
that is a big marker in our funding. And that is, so if you're ever talking to community members that say like, oh, I really don't want to fill out that paperwork, my kids don't like school lunch, or like I feel bad because I don't need it as much as other people, please continue to encourage anybody to fill out that free and reduced lunch paperwork, because it's so much more than just breakfast and lunch. It is our federal funding. It affects kids' abilities to apply for colleges or the SAT for free. It really is in everyone's best interest if anyone can fill that paperwork out. So ESSER 1, 2, and had to switch it up. So ARP ESSER 3 are the ESSER grants that fell under that FRL tied funds. So the framework that we have used to do our planning around how to spend that money was around safety and health, academic, social emotional needs, and engagement and attendance recovery. So for ESSER 1, that came out to about $180,000. We used that to do some construction around needs around health offices. So as a result of the pandemic, the actual spaces we needed for health offices changed a little bit. And so we had to work on that. Screeners, some food extra costs for, like we did summer food throughout that whole first summer and needed to fund that support for families. Extra sanitation needs fell into that, and an increase in Google licenses that we needed to do some of our various remote work all fell under that first ESSER grant. ESSER 2 is what we're working with right now. That is about $720,000. And so we have been spending that on curriculum needs, professional development related to moving on throughout the pandemic and getting kids what they need, more sanitation costs, summer program, after school tutoring this year, some transportation needs, continual needs in the health office for supplies, for extra hours. Our nursing staff works, you wouldn't believe the amount of hours they're still putting in almost 2 years later. And so we want to support them when we can. And we're working on renovating the old central office building that's over by Clarendon for some specific student-based needs that we'll have in that space. And right now we're in the process of planning for ARP ESSER, which is that third grant related to these funds. So on Thursday, Brian and I are hosting a stakeholder engagement meeting for anybody who is associated with a civil rights organization in our area that would like to give us feedback from any lens of making sure that we are supporting all people in our community and that everyone has a voice and we don't have any blinders on where we're leaving anybody out. So that is at the district office, and we did warn that in the newspaper a couple times. I'm happy to give more information if anyone wants that. And then we'll be working to have meetings with board members and parents and teachers and students at every single one of our schools to get more information about the things that we should think about including for this next grant. And so just continually trying to make sure that we are listening to everybody, integrating that feedback into our planning, and thinking at this stage how we are going to use continuing federal grant money to help students continue to thrive, to meet their new and emerging needs. Because if you think about it, so I have a 3-year-old who has lived 2/3 of her life in the corona pandemic, and she still has 15 more years in our system before she's done, right? So the corona pandemic is not going away when we talk about educational needs. The next at least 15 or more years of students will be affected by the pandemic. And so we want to be so thoughtful with how we are planning our systems and our structures and our use of resources around making sure that we're doing the best for our kids. Any questions on that? All right.
So as you can see, we first appreciate your time. I know this is not the most thrilling information to be conveyed. But as you can see, there's a lot that we do, and there's a lot that we work at to try and support student needs, all of our student needs, and to do it in a way that is still fiscally responsible, because it would be easy to not go out and do this grant work. it would be easy just to try and use local budget. So it's definitely a priority that we find the funds that we can find, and we do the work to match the need with the grant that's going to meet that need best. Maria, question?
Hi, thanks, Brian. I really appreciate this presentation. This is all really valuable information to us. So thank you. I also wonder,
absolutely.
How do we measure the success of these grants? Like, how do we measure what we've achieved through them?
That's a great question. And I can, Coral, I see you want to jump in. Let me talk title funds first, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
With our title funds, which is our largest federal grant fund that I was speaking about, the Agency of Education actually requires us to document work done. And so, for example, intervention program, every year we're sending in intervention data to the state with the understanding that we need to be funding programs that work. So if our intervention program were not successful, we would have a really hard time continuing to access that large grant fund. The MAC grant has similar requirements that we track progress as we do that. E-rate really doesn't. And Carrie, I'm pretty sure, Carrie Becker would tell you after school has to do a similar process of showing the work that they're doing. Sorry for pausing you there, Coral, if you want to jump in now.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so on the IDEA B grant side of things, there are certain pieces of evidence that are required to be submitted and tracked. So, ultimately all this money goes to helping kids make progress. That's what it's all about. So we have to show that that's happening. And we do that through like the IEP goals and objectives. For example, if I have money in the grant that is allocated for one of our staff to travel somewhere, we have to have a travel log that documents that the money went to that. Salary and benefits is a little bit different, but in general, any positions that are funded, we also have to show that kids are somehow benefiting from that. So for example, if I have a counselor in the grant, I've got to show evidence of how many kids are served, what goals are being worked on, whether those kids were making progress towards those goals. There's a number of evidence submissions that have to happen around the effectiveness of special services. So that's how that one goes.
Maria?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, sorry. This is one place where I actually do have some background in another universe, in another world. But so there's different ways of documenting it, right? There's the, like, yes, we did spend the money on the specific things that we said we were going to spend the money on. But the part about, yes, the kids benefited from us spending the money on the things we said we were going to spend the money on. So that's where you're talking about goals. Like, did they achieve these goals, or were these like that? That's
I am.
Or is it us who documents that, or is there anybody else who comes in?
No, that's why you pay me. That's why you have me here. But also, I've talked to you all before about the monitoring process. That's all related to this. We're being monitored on how effectively and appropriately we're spending our federal grant funds. That's what monitoring is. So when I talk about how exhaustive it is, that's what it is. They're going to ask me to submit hundreds of pieces of evidence to say, this is what we spent the money on, this is why. So you have to provide a rationale for why you thought that way, in addition to actual like samples. So it's pretty labor intensive, believe me. But yeah, that's what I do.
Oh, I believe you, and I really appreciate all.
Yeah, no, you guys, you don't have to do that. You're lucky.
I guess I just want it spelled out so it's really clear how that all gets appreciated.
Yep.
Thanks for the question, Maria, and thank you, Coral, for lots and lots and lots of paperwork. Does anyone else have any questions for Coral or Brian or Jody? Nope. Was there anything?
I just want to say thank you. That was really well and clearly presented. So thank you so much for that information.
Okay. I guess if we're done with item 6, we will move on to bylaws review process proposal.
Yes, that would be me. First, I want to thank Brian and Coral and Jody for the presentation. Also want to let the board know when we get to agenda building, we have on tap for you at our next board meeting. We have part 1 of a 2-part presentation about our systems of student support within the district. So we will be asking you to put that on the next agenda for the December 1st meeting, if you're willing. And on the bylaws piece, I am going to share my screen with you. Board members, what I'm sharing is a document that you have received twice from me. You received it earlier today, and then you received it a few weeks ago. I've had some conversation about the need to review and potentially modify our bylaws, which do have procedures built into them for amendment. I've got here a proposed timeline for us to do that work. Under the theoretical version, we could approve this timeline tonight, and then you can just see how I tried to logically break down the sections of the bylaws in manageable chunks to get us to an early February timeframe where we could potentially have a board vote to amend those bylaws and proceed from there. Also, the document that I've shared with you, I'm just scanning through this. The bylaws are there for you, as are, if you go all the way to the end, our original articles of incorporation, which is what the voters of our 4 communities voted on in the merger process. So all the information for your nighttime reading is there to give a look and to prep for that bylaws work. So I would love to entertain a motion to approve that timeline, and we could proceed as follows, but I'd also be happy to just step aside as you discuss.
A note, I didn't have an attachment on that email that you sent today.
Oh, did I mess up and not attach that? I'll do
I don't
that.
know if it was just me, but
I'll do. Anyone else that noticed or did
It's
not
just
notice the
you.
attachment?
I have it right here.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
could you resend it to me? Because it is
Or at
missing.
least it's Adrian and who knows who else, but it's not.
Will
Yeah.
do. Board members, I will resend you.
I got
just so,
them email, just no attachment.
No problem.
Thank you.
I would like to make the motion that we accept the timeline proposal as presented by Superintendent Younts.
Is there a second? Thank you, Liz, for keeping me on track.
I second that.
Thanks, Andrea. Is there any other comments or anything else, or we'll just take a vote? Okay, seeing no hands. Oh, nope, Len, go ahead. Got it in time.
Sorry, being behind the mask. I'm going to vote against this just because we have a ton on our plate right now in terms of what we're trying to get accomplished. And to me, my opinion, this is just another piece that gets placed on there and we're not getting anything done. So I will vote against it, just so you know. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Len. Are there any other comments? Okay, then all in favor of the timeline that Dave presented, please raise your hands or say aye. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we have 6 in favor. All nays, please. We have 1, 2, 3.
Pardon me, Adrian.
Yep.
I think because it's virtual, you have to have a roll call if it's not.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry you hadn't said that earlier. You're absolutely correct.
Great catch, Ann. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'll just go along my screen. Andrea, what's your vote?
Yes. Yes.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Andrea. Liz?
Yes, thank you.
Maria?
Yes.
Thank you. Bruce?
Nope.
Okay. I almost asked you, Brian. Lynn? I know you're in it, but you have to say it. Or put your hand up. That was a no?
Sorry, my microphone was off. That's
okay.
a no.
Okay, thank you.
Ann's in the room.
I know, I get it. DJ?
Yes.
Thank you. Asha?
Yes.
Doug. Doug? Okay, that's a no. Sam?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just trying to see. I'll vote yes, not that it's necessary. So we have 1, 2, 3, 7 to 3. Are we missing somebody today, or did I miss somebody?
Matt Gaussberg is not with us tonight.
Oh, that's true. I haven't seen Matt. You're right. Goodness. Sorry, Matt, if you're watching. Okay, so it passed 7 to 3.
Thank you. We'll have that prep for you for the next meeting to get started.
Okay. Try not to make it too onerous. But thank you. Now we have committee business. Personnel. Len, would you like to take that on?
Yes, I can unmute myself and we'll move right along here. We met tonight and at one time I had everything here and now it seems to have disappeared. Oh, I got it. I would like to make a motion to approve a contract for Karen Castle, 1.0 full-time equivalency support staff, special ed paraeducator at Wallingford Elementary School. And I would make that motion.
I will second it.
Okay. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
There we go. Moving right along. I'd make a motion to approve the contract for Jennifer Flood, 1.0 full-time equivalency support staff, general ed paraeducator at Wallingford Elementary School, and I make that motion. And Sam says she seconds it.
Maria had a number 2 hand up, but I'll take the talking.
Discussion. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? We're good. Approve a contract for Kimberly Colomb, 0.8 full-time equivalency support staff, food service at Shrewsbury Mountain School. And I would make that a motion.
So enthusiastically seconded, unless somebody wants to unmute and take that from me.
Liz keeps trying.
Okay, I think we got a second somewhere in there. All those in favor? Yes. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. The other part that we dealt with tonight was a list of winter coaches. And I'm just going to ask that we approve them. All of these coaches have been coaches, were coaches last year. So there's no new additions. So I would make a motion that we approve the list of coaches for winter sports. And Sam says second.
Yep. Still nobody unmuted before me.
Sam?
You all had warning.
You nod more than once and you're good to go.
I did catch Maria trying.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We will meet again. The Personnel Committee will meet again December 1st, I think it is, when our next meeting is. We just as an update, we didn't talk anything about the superintendent's evaluation or any of that tonight. Tonight was just get these contracts done. So that will be on the agenda for December 1st.
Thank you,
And
Len.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you, and welcome, everybody. We have policy, and BJ has a number of first readings for us.
Yay. So this was one of those policy meetings where we came in, we had some ones that we had to get done that were brought up, but it just was like check. Things came together, and it was really good to have that feeling of getting everything done. And one of the ones that were on that agenda for quite a while actually finished too. So for first reading, so I'm just gonna go one at a time here. We have travel reimbursement D18. I'm going to do these individually. So can I have a motion? I saw Elizabeth's hand go up first. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay.
I think Len seconded.
I gave that to Liz.
Oh, you made the motion. Okay, sorry.
I made the, okay. Well, I don't know how we're doing it then.
Yeah.
Sorry, Len. Okay, we have D20, prevention of conflict of interest in procurement. And this is specifically for financial purchases. Am I correct, David? Okay, I got a thumbs up from David. Cool. May I have the motion? Elizabeth?
So moved,
seconding?
yep.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand. Opposed? And abstain. Not hearing anything. Okay, we have E14, capitalization of assets for a first reading. I'm making the motion. Do I have a second? I'm going to give that one to Sam. Although I think Andrea really tried hard.
I was going to say, I'm trying to raise my hand. You guys got to watch.
I know. I was so excited for you, Andrea. If I can concede the second to you, I will.
Liz told me to do it, so I'm taking her advice.
Okay, so let's have the vote. All in favor? Yeah, Andrea's a yes on that one. Okay, last one, and this is the one that's been on the agenda and the rotation. So this is actually, I think, one of our first that was on the rotation that we finally got done and discussed. F1, school community behavioral expectations. And I just want to address that as there was a lot of talk about, great, I'm blanking on the term. Jody?
Restorative justice practices.
Restorative justice practices with that. And we talked about that at length. So I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to make the motion to move this to a first reading. Do I have a second? Okay, Elizabeth, I think, was first. Sorry, Sam. Any more discussion about this? Andrew, do you actually have discussion? Because I know you're trying to raise your hand.
No, I'm just preparing myself right here.
Okay, all in favor?
Me.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, anybody opposed? Okay, any abstains? Great. Okay. So our next meeting is in December. We have Diane. Oh, Len.
Len.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank Jody for her help in putting this together. I appreciated it. So thank you.
Thanks, Len.
Can I have a quick question, BJ? Yeah. Was it school community behavioral expectations or student or school student? I mean, or excuse me, I thought that was student behavioral expectations.
Adrian, my recollection is that's how it started out, and the committee discussed that
school community.
That these expectations applied to the school community. So not
okay,
just
thank
school
you.
and community, but the school community.
And I'm sure I had that at the moment. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, because I think there was some stuff in there with like how principals and teachers were supposed to act too. So
yeah, well, it's in the student section.
Yeah, but yeah,
but I got it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So our next meeting is going to be December 14th. And Anne, if you want to make a note, it's on the calendar, but it's on the calendar for the wrong date. I don't know if there was a reason for that on the board calendar.
Okay,
But
what date is it on for? Do you know?
you have it on the board calendar for the 21st. I
Okay,
think it's
I'll check
supposed to
it.
be the 14th.
Okay, I'll make sure it's the 14th.
Okay. And so I think that finishes up policy.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. We have community engagement. Maria.
Thanks, Adrian. So we did not have a quorum at our last meeting, so we didn't really have an official meeting. But I can report on something that we have been talking about over the last several meetings, because I don't feel like I've been able to make a proper committee report in a while. And that is that the committee would like to, we've been talking a lot about having a kind of a climate survey that we do 3 times a year, once in the fall to that will go out to the community and we'll go out to staff and we'll say, how are you doing in a very, and this will be very, I mean, we don't have specifics about it yet. This is sort of a floating to the board about how you feel about this, but the fall one will be a sort of, how are we doing? What do we want to accomplish this year? And then we'll have one sort of midway through the school year that'll say, hey, how are we doing? Are we on track to accomplish the things we thought we wanted in the fall? Do we think we need to redirect, given who knows what will come up now that we know that anything can happen, including global pandemics? And then a third one in the spring saying, hey, how did we do? This is what you said you'd like to see happen. Are we accomplishing that? Should we have accomplished that? And how are we doing? Just sort of generally, like on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 4, really, since we're familiar with that scale. Are we achieving it? Are we going above and beyond it? Are we sort of almost there? Or are we nowhere? I'm talking about the backward scale. That way, are we nowhere near it? Should we reassess? And the usefulness of this could be for the superintendent evaluation, because it could play into that process that we're part of in terms of finding out, I mean, he or she, whoever the superintendent is at the time, is responsible for the sort of climate and culture of the district. It's also would be valuable information for the board to see, are we on track in general? It serves the board in our, 50,000 foot view of the district, like, do things seem to be going well? And it could help us be like, well, no, things are obviously, there's something wrong and we need to pinpoint what that is and maybe pay more attention to it via policy or finance or some way in which we do have some way of affecting things, or in our responsibility for the superintendent. And also, of course, this would be public knowledge because it would be something that we shared at board meetings, which is accessible to the public. So we were thinking that as an engagement committee, that this would be a way to support board engagement with our community and to keep our, I just want to figure out how to say this right, keep our engagement with the community, but also keep our responsibility, keep our action appropriate to what our charge is as the board. Does that make sense? More or less. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. We're going to obviously talk about this more at our next meeting because we didn't have a quorum at the last one. Please, community engagement, if you can possibly come, you can call in, you can be part of the next meeting, however you want. And that meeting is on December 14th, just after the policy committee, which has officially been changed to December 14th. So hopefully we'll see you there. The next community conversation will be on, that would be the 3rd Monday in December. So that would be the 20th. And if you would bear with me for just a really momentary, or if you'd like, you can come back to me. Let me know, Adrian, what you like, but I can quickly find out who is planned to be at the next.
Just go ahead. We're not.
I have it right here. It's really easy for me to bring up. December 20th, which is the last one that signed up for, actually. It's a good point. Is BJ, myself, and Sam with Matt as an alternate in case one of us can't make it. And so with that, it looks like I will be sending out the dates for the New Year's community conversations to the rest of the board and inviting you to sign up. And then continuing to send you emails if you don't sign up.
Thank you for that promise.
Probably tonight. So just so you're ready for that.
Maria, did you want any kind of a report on the last conversation?
Yeah, I mean, if you'd like to share anything that came up at that one. That
Well, I
would be
thought maybe
great.
Asha would, because she was taking notes and sort of, she ran it, so.
Asha, you're on.
Thanks, Adrienne. Glad to weigh in or to share what we discussed. Yes, so we had 3 community members in attendance at that community conversation. I personally was glad to see some folks from Tinmouth joining us, and that was nice to connect with neighbors and answer their questions. Items discussed included a bit of conversation. Actually, I think one of the most interesting parts of our conversation, without going too much into it, was a discussion about the role of the school in children's lives versus the role of the community, the role of families, the role of organizations or activities that students and families may be involved in. I really appreciated the dialogue that we had there. Just to have a consideration of what that role looks like and at how sometimes, based on a family's needs, sometimes school ends up playing a bit more of a role. Sometimes the family is, ideally, of course, the family is able to really take on that education role for a child. But it was some really good conversation, and we'll be happy to share those notes. And if folks have any additional questions, happy to answer them. But it was a productive conversation. Adrienne, Andrea, and I were the board members present. And I'm always so grateful to hear community feedback. Folks were also asking better ways that they might be able to get involved, to share their thoughts and help support our work as a board. And we were happy to share some ways for them to engage, including attending committee meetings, which I always encourage. Thanks.
Thank you. Did anybody have anything to add to that? Okay. The next one is negotiations, and there's not really anything to report other than we're continuing to meet, and everybody appears quite cordial, and meetings are actually sort of fun so far. I think on both sides. And we have another one coming up. I'm not sure, when is it? The 21st of December also. Well, I guess we were the night, the 21st. That wasn't policy or community engagement. It was negotiations. So now we go on to buildings and grounds. Do we have updates, Doug?
Adrian, we have the 30th.
What?
We've got November 30th.
Oh, November 30th. That's true. I missed November. Thank you.
No
Sorry.
problem.
November 30th and then the 21st. We set up a lot of meetings. It was great. Thanks, Dave. So, Doug.
Yeah, nothing to report. I guess we're all still waiting for $100,000 school buses to come to us, and they can't even send $60 pieces of 4x8 plywood. If that comes, we'll be able to have one. The next one would be December the 7th. It'll be 6 o'clock right here in this very same little building we're in. And if I can find out anything beforehand, we'll send something out. Oh, by the way, I did make a delivery today, no, yesterday, of a 65-gallon storage tank for Tim and his group of maple syrup makers and stuff. Donated by 2 people, actually to the company, but 2 people, one of which is an assistant basketball coach for boys varsity. It's Brian Blanchard. Yeah, anyway, and the other one was for, I can't remember his name now. Anyway, he was a basketball player. He's a 3-year starter for boys basketball. Two of them got together and said, listen, let's help the local community. We can do things like that with the people here. When I first talked to him, there was 130 of those containers. Yesterday, I took the last of the 4 that were there. So we sort of got through that. And he's looking for other things. So we'll see what we can do for him a little better down the line. Kids are having the ball. They still don't know how they're going to get things to me, to where they're going to be. But they're doing a good job. I'm just glad they were able to get that.
Thanks, Doug. That's nice to know. Ad hoc committee. I guess Matt is not here, so we will go to Len.
Sorry, Doug and I had to switch places here.
I saw that. It was very confusing.
And I want some of that maple syrup. That's all I'm saying. We had our meeting last Wednesday. We're looking at the questions that we're going to ask of the community in terms of not just folks that have left, but also looking down the road on a regular yearly basis of asking people how the year went. And Maria, you and I think at some point need to get together, and because I think we both committees are heading in the same direction, and it would be nice to put our work together so that we're not duplicating, it's not like we don't have enough to do. And so we're meeting again on the 23rd, I think is our next ad hoc committee meeting at 5:30. It'll be virtual again. I think it's really been good. We've had a lot of community input. It's a piece of work. It really is. But I think we're doing okay. Asha, you want to add anything? Because you've been so very helpful. So.
Oh, thanks so much, Len. Been grateful for community attendance at that committee meeting. Like I just said about the community conversation, it is always so nice when community members do show up, and you all let us know what you'd like to see. So I would encourage more folks if you'd like to come and be a part of that committee meeting or of any others. We'd love to have you.
Thanks. And I think, it's a work in progress. There's no doubt about that. But I think we're trying to accomplish some things, which is just to say, okay, and it goes back to what you were saying, Maria. How are we doing? Are we doing a good job? And how can we do a better job? And that's all. It's pretty simple stuff. It really is. So we're doing okay.
And when do you think you'll have a report on what questions you're going to bring to the whole board to?
Yeah, we should have that. We're going to meet on the 23rd. So the first board meeting in December, we should have those questions for the board approval.
And maybe we could get the two committees together to work on the community survey.
Yeah.
If you and Maria got together and talked, because you're right, duplicating that would be.
Yeah. And I think, again, I want to make it clear. And I think I said this at our last ad hoc committee meeting. We're not looking to point fingers at anybody. We're just trying to see, what have we done that's good? What can we do to make it better? And how can we continue to make this a good school district? That's all. And I think, David, I sent that in an email to you the other day. I don't want to be singling anybody out. I think I said at the last meeting at the ad hoc committee, I have too much skin in this game, 20 years worth of skin that I just want to see us do well. That's all.
Thanks, Lynn. Finance, Liz.
Good evening, everyone. We have the following payroll for approval this evening. Dated November 5th, we have regular payroll in the amount of $587,731.66. And we have regular payroll dated November 16th in the amount of $6,235.96 for a grand total of $593,967.62. And I move that we accept and approve this payroll as presented.
Would you like me to do that? Or, okay.
I'll second.
BJ seconding. Liz, would you like to call the question? Or the, I mean.
I thought I just did.
Well, you hadn't, yeah, there wasn't BJ yet.
Okay, so I can recall the question.
I'm sorry. I get it. Yep.
That's all right.
It's very odd that the committee people are calling their own questions, but they are.
Okay, so then please call the question, Adrian. Thank you.
No, I didn't mean me. I meant that you were doing it yourself and then asking for a second. That's what gets me confused every time.
Okay.
It's fine. You can handle the vote. That's cool. That's perfect.
So BJ seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Anyone opposed, please raise your hand. Thank you. And we next meet on Monday, the 22nd. We are meeting virtually at 4:30 p.m.
Cool. Thank you. Let's see, we are done. Do we have other legal business? We have one thing listed.
Hold on.
What?
Liz, did you have a second one? One for general fund?
I was just looking back.
I don't actually.
I do.
Thank you for asking that, Doug. I only got the regular payroll from the business office.
Yeah, payroll warrants. This is under general fund for 2 numbers and an ASP number, which I have no idea. FY, that's got to be the other person involved. You want me to read through?
Yeah, it got sent out this morning, Liz.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't get it. That's weird.
9:45.
I don't have it.
I just found it.
So yeah, Doug, if you don't mind, I would appreciate that.
Well, that's why I'm here. Let's see. It's under the general fund. The numbers in front of the letters in front is KF space FY22 for an amount of $383,837 even. A general fund number for MF at FY22 for $9,098.74. And another situation called an ASP. Do you know what that means?
That's after school program.
There you go. That was also done by MF fiscal year 22. $662.07 for a grand total of $393,597.81. There is some student activity. Evidently, we didn't give them any money, so that's all zeros through there. So there you are.
So shall I call that question then? Okay. So all those in favor of approving the pay warrants as presented by Doug Earl, raise your hand. Thank you so much. Anyone opposed? Thank you so much.
Okay. We are back to transacting other legal business, and we do have the board retreat format, whether people want to meet in person, virtual, or hybrid. We held off on warning it to see how this week went at Mill River and at the schools in general, and how people were feeling. So If anyone has a preference, please speak up.
In person.
Okay, one vote for in person. Is there any question that people just want to meet in person? You can just give me sort of a hands up. We don't have to have this conversation.
Andrea, I am sick with my son's cold, so I would rather not be in front of all of you, so you do not get sick.
We appreciate that. You may join remotely, Andrea. We will appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Just send me the link. And I will be more than happy.
Andrea.
Yes.
Very remotely.
Yeah, like South Carolina remotely.
Okay. Maria had her hand up.
Thanks, Adrienne. Yeah, I would like to put in another vote for remote, just given that Rutland County right now is in an extreme, and whatever the highest rating is of COVID transmission. And personally, I have children and I work with a number of Rutland County children, as well as some other, probably Windsor County and Bennington County. And for everyone's safety, I would prefer to be remote as well.
Okay. Is everybody else comfortable in meeting we can meet in the library where there's, better air handling and such.
I raise my hand. I would just like to be a voice for a hybrid or a virtual option. Myself, I have personal risk factors, and when the transmission rate is this high, I would like to not have contact in person. I love you all. I respect you all, and I will less breathe your air if we are this way. So I don't ever want it to be thought that I don't value when we get to be in person, especially these sessions I feel have been absurdly invaluable to be in person around the same table. And this is just sucky during a pandemic. I don't have a better, more educated word for it.
Thanks, Sam. I think we all agree. BJ?
Yeah, I was actually going to go for, I think it would be good to be hybrid on that day. I would like to see if we can work out a few more of the kinks. And Brian and I were chit-chatting back and forth and brainstorming how we could improve it. And I almost want to try, now that this one's virtual, I almost want to try being in person the next time. So I kind of want to try both ways. So that's my hybrid suggestion. Although I don't even know if I can. I'll find out where my kids are on the 20th.
Yeah, it's in 3 days.
It may be safer for me to be away.
Okay. I'm hearing some mixed bags here. It sounds like we might end up with more people that are remote. Oh, Asha, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No
Yeah,
problem,
go ahead.
Adrian. I would also, I'd also advocate for the hybrid, given the case counts at this moment and what it sounds like. Sam, I appreciate you mentioning your personal risk factor. I think that for inclusion, we should at least then offer a hybrid.
Okay. Yes, Len? You're muted.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Ann's telling me, unmute yourself.
Yes.
I didn't want to make it sound like we could only do it one way. I would prefer to meet in person, but I am more than welcome to do whatever folks feel most comfortable with. I will be here just because it's easy for me to be here. Even if it's stormy, I can walk.
Bring headphones.
So I'm willing to be here as even if I'm the individual that's here, as Doug and I are tonight. So I'm fine with that. I don't want to make it sound like I'm imposing on people. I'm good with whatever the majority feels.
Okay, Dave?
Yeah, just for clarity's sake, I want to make sure that we understand that if you do a hybrid setup, it is in the conference room. Because that's where our setup is. We wouldn't be able to move that to the library.
Depending on how many, people there are, it sounds like it's going to be closer to remote than it is in person, but that's fine. I think everybody
vote and just kind of see where it is, or just like raise your hands for who wants to be in person, blah, blah, blah. So that way we get somewhat of a rough idea.
Andrea, are you making a motion?
Yes,
Well.
I am, BJ. I'm making a motion. I don't know
I
what
would
I did, but I'm
enthusiastically
doing it.
second it. Yeah, you got your hand up, but you didn't get your words out.
Wait, BJ second.
No,
All
I
in
opened it
favor of
to
a hybrid
guys.
on Saturday. I'm sorry.
We're almost done here.
And I'm willing to do whatever I need to do here, to make sure that that part is covered. So.
Okay, so to give people an idea of who is planning on being remote, please raise your hand, either virtual or. Andrea, we saw yours. Asha, Sam, Maria, I'm wavering both ways, so we'll see. And who is planning on being at the school? So Bruce, Len, BJ, Doug, are you at school? Yes, okay. So we're about half and half.
Yeah.
Okay. We will send out instructions on when this is better figured out on how a hybrid will, because obviously this was not really hybrid. I mean, we only had 2 people in person and it was not planned that way, but. So await your agenda and it'll have links and a few more instructions if that's okay with people. Okay, and it'll get warned, properly.
Adrian,
Yes.
since we actually officially made a motion, do we have to undo that?
Oh, was it seconded? I'm sorry. BJ, did you actually second it?
Yeah, there was an actual second
Okay. What was the
Or we can
motion
just
again,
vote.
Andrea?
to do hybrid next
To
time.
have Saturday be hybrid.
Okay, thank you. So is there any other comment? Because I'll just call the question since we've already voted on where we're going to be. Okay, there's no more comment. Are we in favor of presenting or having our retreat as a hybrid setup? Please raise your hand.
Do I have to raise my hand again?
No, yes.
Okay, you know where I stand.
Yes, thank you. You just said it. We're good. Okay, that was unanimous that we are having a hybrid. Thanks, Andrea, and thank you, BJ, for catching that we needed to vote still. Is there any other legal business after that?
I don't have legal business, but I would like to apologize to Karen, whose email I did just find.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
and
it happens.
Len has
yes,
something to
Len?
say.
Yep.
I would just like to bring up again, whether we bring it up Saturday or at another point, to talk about the executive council.
Yep.
And
on the agenda.
Okay.
It's already on there.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yep, you're welcome. Anything else? Yes, BJ?
Location. I would really, the first time that we feel comfortable going to the elementary schools, I would really like to get into those buildings and just see the buildings I represent.
I agree entirely. And I think while, as Sam put it, transmission is so high in Rutland County. I mean, we're like, almost leading the pack if we aren't, which is really sort of sad. I think that's a good idea. I mean, I would definitely like that. Keep bringing it up. Anything else? Okay, we have agenda building. What I have so far is the format of hybrid meetings. I mean, I'm putting it on the agenda, but so we'll see how this the retreat works and see what needs to still be discussed. I also have the systems of support presentation by the administration, and then hopefully the ad hoc committee question report will be available. Is there anything else, Dave?
And the executive council there.
If that's what we decide at the retreat. This is the agenda for the next board meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
Next board meeting, Adrian, I've got bylaws review process, get that started. Tyler with a student board member or something. Yep. I'm suspecting a COVID update might be timely, just kind of a status update. And we've got official warning and approval of 4 policies potentially that you approve for first reading tonight.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I would just like to flag, Anne has a question about confirming that we will warn publicly in newspaper. Did folks see that? Okay, thanks, Dave.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that question.
It's fine if Dave responded to her. Okay.
Oh,
I just
okay.
wanted to make
All
sure
right.
her question was answered.
Okay, thank you. So if I don't hear from anybody else, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Len, Liz, everybody. Okay, I think we have a consensus that we are adjourning. Thank you very much. See you Saturday.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.